I was quite inspired by Jack Dorsey.
What makes Bitcoin special? You don't need anyone's permission to build what you want to see.
When Geyser came up, we didn't have to ask for permission for a bank to create a license. And it was just something you could just do.
Geyser Fund is a solution that allows you to fund your business or project in Bitcoin.
There's all these projects now in Geyser from literally all over the world, and we're seeing contributions happening cross continent, right? So Bitcoiners care about funding each other across continents. You have to remember what Bitcoin is in its full potential. And if you want Bitcoin really to succeed, you have to see Bitcoin as money. If you walk down the street in New York and you ask people what is money, they will not know. Go to one of these courses in El Salvador or Nigeria. These people know more about money than any normie in the Western world.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and today I am grateful to be joined by MetaMick, the co-founder of Geyser Fund, a crowdfunding platform based on Bitcoin. Here at Bitcoin News, we have the mission statement, accelerate adoption, and I think what is going on over at Geyser is one of the best examples of this worldwide. So yes, Mick, thank you very much for joining the show.
Oh man, Rob, thank you so much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. Big fan of your work.
Cheers. Thank you. Yes, and I of yours. I think what you're doing over at Geyser is extremely important for the community and really is a platform like none other. So before we dive into the platform itself, let's talk about your journey. I did some homework on you, and you studied anthropology and economics. And you say that studying these two things were sort of at odds with each other. However, you can see that they tie together quite nicely to form the work that you are doing today. So I would like to talk about your intellectual background and how it led you to Bitcoin and crowdfunding.
Yeah, man, thank you. So yeah, I have this really, again, as you mentioned, studying anthropology and economics are quite diverse. So a lot of people study just one thing and have one sort of way of thinking, and I was challenged to think in almost opposing ways and trying to see how to reconcile them. I'll tell people and professors that I study anthropology and economics, and they think, how are you not sort of psychotic or psychopath or sort of because they're such different disciplines. And so that allowed me to really just take a step back and try to be evidence-based and not sort of follow any sort of dogmatic doctrine, which many of these academic pursuits are these days. You go to anthropology, you become a Marxist. You go to economics, you become not even a libertarian, but you just become like a sort of a crony capitalist in many cases. For me, there was always like a gap in terms of understanding how the world works today. Like there's many great things about the world of today. There's economic growth. There is places like China. There's exorbitant growth and removing people out of poverty. But at the same time, there's there's sort of social unease. There's something that doesn't really quite make sense. Like in anthropology, there's this famous anthropologist called Durkheim. He called it anomie, which is in French means like a lack of ease. And I think it's a lot of what I felt a lot of young people feel kind of going out of the workforce and sort of feeling not in my case but in many cases overloaded by debts and repayments that will take decades to refill, hard ladder, and this feeling that actually you're not going to be able to provide your children the same that you were provided, and that is one of the worst feelings ever. So there's something really that didn't really make sense. I started then working in a nonprofit sector and actually saw firsthand how ultimately the good of the world, the sort of improvements in lifestyle and life being, comes through innovation, through technologies, through like technology really is the sort of thing that lifts all boats. And you go into these villages and be a lot of people with very little, and then they have smartphones and they communicate with each other across. They have family members working all over and providing remittances back. And I think that really made me appreciate the value of that, and the kind of and that's something that economics does say a lot is what is the rate of technological progress? That is really what it's all about and what lifts humanity up, right? And so basically with that, I sort of opened my mind to then what came to me as it came, which is Bitcoin, and understanding that this is the technology, not just the technology, but the technology of money. And just like other technology, it's deflationary and just reduces the cost of everything. And so to me, Bitcoin clicked in a really interesting kind of almost immediate way. Obviously, I went down the blockchain rabbit hole as well, and then I realized, okay, this is a lot of bullshit. Bitcoin is really like the innovation here. And so with that, with sort of the social anthropological background that I have, I didn't really quite fall with the belief that that a lot of libertarians have, that we're all just individuals, like this sort of Ayn Randian world where we're all just individuals in our own individual boxes. And a lot of that is important and it's true, and I think it's important to take individual responsibility. But I also am a firm believer that communities are really powerful systems, and that what was forming around Bitcoin is actually a type of community of individuals that cared about individual property and individual rights and so forth. And so that's when I understood that, okay, although that we can leverage community to our advantage, that we can as a community come together and help Bitcoin adoption happen faster, that we can support each other across the world through this community that is global. And this is funny because I kind of come from I went to international schools. I come sort of a global, a background where a lot of my friends were international. So for me, it was quite easy. And in the Bitcoin communities today, you go to these conferences, and there's literally people from all over the world. It's just the most amazing kind of crystallization of a type of globalism, if you will, uh, that is actually positive. Like, it's not a top-down yet, right? You could, but it's not a top-down sort of like crony, bureaucratic, parents are in the embassy, working for the big corporations, the big, nonprofits or UN. It's none of that. That's like fake sort of crony, top-down globalism. But Bitcoin actually creates a globalism that actually unifies people based on principles in a very bottom-up way that is, I think, beautiful and incredibly enriching and empowering. So we can all come together and bring our own differences and learn from each other. Like, there's all these projects now in Geyser from literally all over the world, and we're seeing contributions happening cross-continent, right? So Bitcoiners care about funding each other across continents. It's crazy. So I think that's an interesting kind of maybe controversial, non-common kind of perspective, maybe, but it is, I think, happening. Bitcoin is a community. It's a global community, but it is grassroots. It's bottom up. It's emergent, and Geyser is all about leveraging that. It's bringing the community out and making the community come together to facilitate and accelerate adoption, which I think is really almost an existential like thing that we need to really pursue because the state of the world of today. But yeah, maybe hopefully that sort of answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to jump off from. And when we look at anthropology and we look at economics, it's at its base level, it's all based off stories, right? And I mean, you were saying Marxism with modern anthropology and the idea of the globally oppressed, right? You have to find the story that makes you more oppressed than another. And then you look at modern economics, and we have Keynesianism and the idea that the government can fix all problems as long as they have enough control over the money printer. So over your experience, I'm sure you had a lot of cognitive dissonance and had to realize that the things that you were being taught were not necessarily how the world actually worked. And I feel like that's a common path for most Bitcoiners. So can you talk about going through that experience of realizing, wow, maybe what I've paid all this money to learn isn't exactly true?
Yeah, I think yeah, you've nailed it there. It kind of felt a bit like that in the end, like, well, the things don't really make sense, and that I've been taught, they don't really make sense, and the reality is a lot more different. And actually, there's this group of Bitcoiners that are like saying these crazy things. Like, they're either crazy or they have understood something quite deep. All right, that's sort of how I felt going into Bitcoin, and um and again, there's a lot of really valuable things to studying these things, but I think the world is changing so fast that it's kind of really lagging behind at the moment. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, if you have a passion for anthropology and economics, there's so much you can learn on your own online. There's so much information. So yes, in terms of the cognitive dissonance, I think it's kind of what I was trying to allude there to, which is you have to sort of live with it. Like, cognitive dissonance is I think should be in some way the natural state of the world. There is so much conflicting information, and how I learn is I sort of absorb it. I sort of ruminate on it. I let it sink in, and then after some time, I'm like, okay, no, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't sit well with me. Again, as you mentioned, you have the sort of more left leaning, and then you have the kind of Keynesianism. But again, in both cases, they're not really quite getting there, right? Because um, Bitcoin, it really tries, it breaks from Marxism completely because it's all about, well, money is a problem. Actually, do you remember Zeitgeist, the documentary? Right. So that was a great documentary that influences me a lot. And it was very much Marxist, right? It was, like the conclusion was the problem is money. Like money is the problem. Money is evil, right? So the answer is, let's go back to what, barter. That makes no sense. And the funny thing about Zeitgeist is actually that Max Kaiser was actually interviewed. And in the German version of Zeitgeist, they left in him talking about Bitcoin, but they removed it for the English version, right? How crazy is that? And this, we're talking 2011, 2012. Like, this would have changed, this would have like increased the rate of adoption of Bitcoin so much, right? So that's interesting, right? And so again, the problem, that the diagnosis of the problem is probably correct, that money is the problem. But it doesn't mean that money inherently is evil or is bad, but money is broken. And on the other hand, you have Keynesianism, that you have to be intervention. Like, you have to assume that the state can intervene and should intervene in money. That there's not even a discussion of what money even is in economics. Like, you go through an entire program, and you're left with like not really knowing what money is and assuming that money is state controlled and should be state controlled, and that is a good thing. So a lot of economists actually don't really get Bitcoin because they never really thought about what are the properties and what is a function of money, and like even the history of money. Like, it's not something you really study. And think about gold, think about the technology of money changing, evolving. So yeah, it was quite interesting to go through this flow and then discovering Bitcoin sort of on my own. It was quite a journey.
Yeah, let's talk about you finding Bitcoin. I know you said the Bitcoin standard brought it all together, but you were exposed to different things before that. So how did you first get into it?
Right. So Andreas Antonopoulos was a big one for me. I actually even went to see him in one of his conferences in London when he was still quite active. Yeah, liked the Bitcoin standard. Read the another really good one that influenced me was the Bitcoin. The was it the layered money, by forget his name, but layered money, another great one. Um, Nick Bhatia, and yeah, a few of the other sort of well-known Bitcoin books. Yeah, quite sort of influenced me to read. What else? Yeah, I read some anthropological ones like 5,000 Years of Debt by Graeber. Some of the writings around anthropology and sociology by Nick Szabo. Yeah, so I was quite active in sort of researching and thinking about it, and then and thinking about what is money and the changing nature of money, and how Bitcoin's going to change society and so forth. But then after a bit, I was like, actually, want to actually build on this. I was quite inspired by Jack Dorsey, who said in one of his talks is that you don't need to permission to build on Bitcoin. You can just build on Bitcoin. And so when the Bitcoin Geyser came up, we didn't have to ask for permission for a bank to create a license and start receiving funds. Like, it was just something you could just do. Yeah, I felt incredibly empowered by that, and I felt the need to contribute to Bitcoin. They say this is an interesting phrase, which is, after 4 years of being in Bitcoin, you get tingly about wanting to contribute to Bitcoin. And they say after 8 years, you start actually being like, okay, I'm done here. I don't know if it's true. So far, not so much. But I do think that after 4 years, somehow you just feel like, I'm tired of sitting on the sidelines. I want to contribute. And that's kind of where Geyser comes in. Like, the belief that anyone can contribute, that this is a permissionless system. It's a fair system where anyone can play a role, whether you're a developer, designer, want to build a company on Bitcoin, or if you want to educate people about Bitcoin, if you want to make a movie about it. There's so many things one can do, and all skills are welcome. You're part of this community, you're part of this team. And I thought that was something, yeah, really beautiful.
And it's funny how life you gain these different skills and talents over time. Your interest leads you in different directions. You going from humanitarian work to working in UX and design. Then you learn about Bitcoin. You spend some time in there and you get the itch. And then you finally say, okay, I want to create Geyser. I want to create this platform. I want to help spread the word, accelerate adoption, and make sure that the people who are making Bitcoin projects are getting the funding that they need. So, but you didn't do this alone, right? You built this as a team. What was it like getting those people together? Were you looking for ideas and then just had a aha moment, or how was the genesis of Geyser?
Yeah, really good question. I was working. It's a confluence of different things. I was playing around with my node and realized, really had this sort of aha moment that understanding Lightning, how it's such a powerful tool to enable instant donations, micro donations, um, and like peer to peer, um, even the aspect of, yeah, just like understanding the UX of it just really made me super bullish about Lightning. Understanding that this is how actually we also scale the number of transactions that can be made on Bitcoin, which was the key kind of problem for me. You know, if Bitcoin is supposed to be this global permissionless money, how is the entire world going to use it? Well, on chain is not going to work. So Lightning really clicked for me. So that was one bit piece. The other piece was I was working for, believe it or not, an Ethereum startup, because a friend of mine invited me to work for his company. And then while I joined in, we pivoted to Ethereum. I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm a Bitcoiner. Um, and although I got to really witness how shitty the shitcoinery is, and I was not happy about that, I felt completely out of place. I also did see how much, well, because of the money, but how much building there was thanks to these crowdfunding platform that exists in Ethereum. You know, with all this sort of VC money going into Ethereum in the 2021s, early 2020s, and very little on Bitcoin, I think a lot of development had gone into kind of developing these ecosystems, which, by the way, I think now have really decayed a lot, and Bitcoin has supplanted them. And I realized, yeah, that these crowdfunding platforms were doing a lot to create this creator ecosystem and sort of empowering people creators to monetize just with this this shitcoin, right? So I so I started thinking, how do we bring these two things together? How do we bring Lightning, which is where we're all going to be operating and transacting on the online kind of creator economy, with crowdfunding that can empower these early projects and empower really anyone that wants to get started, wants to contribute to Bitcoin to do so. And that's when sort of I realized that there was a need for a crowdfunding platform on Lightning. And um, and then that's when I reached out to Stadius, who I had been chatting with for the preceding year around what was possible on Lightning. He had been doing research. He built some tools, and it ended up being just like this perfect fit in terms of where we were. And yeah, we started jamming on different ideas. I came to him with some wireframes and a plan, and he had some good feedback. We started working together and sort of flowed naturally. We had met on Twitter, believe it or not. And then after that came, almost right after, Sazal, another important key founding member of Geyser, who helped to actually build the front end. So with a super small team, we were able to build our first prototype in January 2022, which, as soon as it launched, it kind of took off. Our first tweet kind of went viral, and our first project that we launched with was just a prototype. You can only have one project. You cannot create a project at the time. It was just a super MVP, and they raised around $2,000 to do basically a workshop conference in Nigeria. And that was incredibly powerful. Someone that actually had very low trust in the community was able to raise so much money, well, $2,000 to make his project happen, and in a way that could never have been done with fiat, right? And so that helped us understand we have something. So we started building. We kept on building it. We kept adding to it. Eventually, we met some really good Bitcoin investors that we aligned with, including Brad Mills, who was a key force behind Geyser, and the rest is history. We kept on developing the platform, um, improving it, iterating different things. And yeah, I think, yeah, that's kind of the origin story of Geyser.
Cool. So yes, you launched in early 2022, and then we go into a bear market, right? And so starting any kind of Bitcoin business is not easy, and it's sort of a lot of it depends on timing and if you can ride that wave in the right way. But you were thankfully able to find investors in the beginning and help you ride out that bear market, and now we're into a whole new era, really, even just 3 years later. So talk to us
Yeah.
about what is it like starting a Bitcoin business, finding investors, getting people to believe in you, and building it from the ground up.
Yeah, to your point that things have changed a lot, they definitely have. A lot has happened since. If you think about like the development of Nostr has been massive. If you now you have, nation states adopting it. But there's something about bear markets that was quite interesting. I think what happened is that after the bull run of 2021, that's what brings in a lot of users that then start exploring Bitcoin during the bear market. So you actually had a really like a really high amount of activity in 2020 to 2023. In fact, like a lot, like a boom of activity of people exploring using Bitcoin. Also because with the bear market, you have this sort of low volatility environment of um, what we had, what, 15K at one point, 30K. But like anyway, you had a relatively stable um currency valuation of Bitcoin for around 2 years, and that really helps. The challenge is when Bitcoin is so volatile, people tend to actually hoard it and not use it because, to their point, they don't know what the value of Bitcoin is, so they're sort of scared it might go up, or so they actually hold it. So the bear market was really really good for business in terms of the amount of activity happening. Um, and so right after that, yeah, we did a lot. We built a lot. It was a great time for building. You don't have all this hype. You just build. It was great for that. Raising money, that was really interesting. Again, you're talking about like less than 5% of all investor money in crypto is in Bitcoin, right? So it's all all investment is in crypto still. So it's still tough. We had less than, I don't know, between 10 and 20 uh, platforms that were raising money, that were investing in startups, right? So very very little. And so yeah, so that's sort of where we were able to raise funding, and we have to thank the investors that believe in the vision. So how do we raise? It's a hard one, right? Raising is really hard because you have to strike the balance between being reasonable, what your actual what your product is, and what's the current state of the market, and the belief, really the belief um in what, if certain things, um if these sort of trends pan out, then what can this become? And for us at Geyser, you know uh we are Geyser crowdfunding platform is a crowdfunding platform focused on Bitcoin, but our broader thesis is the belief that Bitcoin changes funding completely. While the big bullish case of Geyser is sort of replace GoFundMe and Kickstarter, not only because it's better technology, but also because it's global. And while these other platforms operate in only like 15 to 20 countries, so we can expand our reach and enable community peer-to-peer funding, and make it available globally. And then that by itself is a very powerful vision and can go very far in terms of creating a multi-million-dollar business. The other thing is just more broadly, like, how is Bitcoin changing completely the realm of finance? And if you think about it, crowdfunding is the sort of the bottom layer of or you could call it the sort of the key primitive of funding, which is literally people collecting and pulling their funds together. But then beyond that, as Bitcoin develops, the belief is that will be a key aspect of funding. And then there will be other things like peer-to-peer lending. There'll be equity, and a lot of things I think will happen natively in Bitcoin, whether it's through securities on Lightning or on Nostr, or things like that. But we believe that, like, crowdfunding is such a really powerful tool that is simple, that is also allows us to be entirely global without straining ourselves in terms of like regulatory challenges, because we are a platform that is non-custodial. We do not custody funds. And so, yeah, those are some of the key considerations that you have to consider when talking to investor. It's and in terms of Geyser Self, we've changed a lot. We're now really trying to focus on getting to a place where we're almost break even instead of like keep on raising. And there've been a lot of learnings along the way. I think at the moment, yeah, after some time, it's easy to get stuck in the loop of just getting more investors, and then you end up in a place where, well, shit, I have no more equity to give to investors, right? So, we learned our lesson as a team, and yeah, we think that it's we realize let's try to remain as lean as possible and get to profitability as a business, and then maybe raise again in the future. But that's sort of where we are now. We're thankful to the Bitcoin community that makes Geyser possible, and yeah, we want to keep kind of growing with the Bitcoin community, and that's the key thing. Is Bitcoin community is very niche, but it is surprisingly big. Like if you hold some Bitcoin, and maybe one influential Bitcoiner, maybe you consider yourself a Bitcoiner, and so you're potentially a user. And I think that user base is actually really big. Like that's probably, I think it's probably in hundreds of millions. I think between 1 and 300 million people own Bitcoin. So that's kind of the market that we think addressable market, which is niche, but at the edges is very big. The Bitcoin Twitter community is super tiny. It's like maybe 100,000 people. That's like 10% or more, less than that, 5% of the actual pool of Bitcoiners. The Bitcoin community on Twitter is, I think, the center of this maybe Nostr now a little bit even more, but there's sort of the influential, the thought leaders, the fights and the wars and the narrative fight is all happening here, but the community is much greater at the edges. So it's really the question of how do we tap into that as well.
I wanted to briefly interrupt today's interview to give a big shout out to our lead sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Buy or sell instantly. Send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. Withdraw straight to cold storage. Even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon, you'll pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and save for retirement, all without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link in the description below. Use promo code BitcoinNews and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino Bitcoin and enjoy the rest of the video. Running a Bitcoin business is never easy, but we are on a mission, right? And we're here to get the word out about these Bitcoiners, their projects, the content they're creating, and the education initiatives. So let's talk about all the different projects that are on Geyser, and over the last 3 years, what are some that have really stood out to you and you think are making some of the biggest differences in the world of Bitcoin?
So Geyser is all about grassroots Bitcoin adoption, and there are 3 key pillars of projects that we have in mind. One is Bitcoin Bitcoin initiatives, and that includes educational initiatives, it includes communities, circular economies, all these projects that are on a mission, very much on the mission of driving adoption almost like directly. Then you have Bitcoin products. And that the first one, the Bitcoin initiative, is a bit like, think of it like, actually there's nothing like it. That's just really Geyser, unique to Geyser. And there's Bitcoin products, and these are product launches. And product launches are not like Amazon. These are products. It could be hardware, it could be new BitX models, it could be software apps, open source software. These are products that are also driving grassroots adoption through tools, which are critical. Tools are a key foundational element of grassroots adoption. And a lot of these are funded by the community. And Geyser enables them also to raise funds to launch. And actually, we do have some big news on this group, and I can mention it later. And then think of this like a Kickstarter. You're launching a new project, And then thirdly, you have causes. And causes are humanitarian, campaigns, fundraising campaigns, events. It's more like maybe not even Bitcoin related even. It's like maybe you have a medical emergency or something like that. And let's think of it like the GoFundMe. And so there's a lot here, but ultimately it's all about leveraging Bitcoin. It's all about Bitcoiners coming together as a community to make Bitcoin happen as quickly as possible through initiatives, through tools, and through causes. So that's kind of how I see Geyser in the big picture. These three key buckets, and in terms of that, the projects that are on it, they are within these three buckets. But in terms of, I think there's probably a few key narratives and trends that have happened. One really important one I think has to be mentioned are circular economies that are happening all over the world. We have more than 80 different circular economies. A lot of them are powered by sort of the Bitcoin Beach model, Bitcoin Beach white paper, the Mi Primer Bitcoin curriculum, the Plan B network curriculum. And they're all sort of on a mission of creating sort of the usage of Bitcoin happen. So they're doing merchant adoption, they're doing education courses, a lot of them are free. And so they're really empowering people, like individuals, to learn about money. And that's incredibly powerful. If you walk down the street in New York, and you ask people what is money, they will not know. But if you go to one of these courses in El Salvador and in Nigeria, and these people know more about money than any normie in the Western world, that's how powerful this is. So that's an important development. Another one I think is this development of all these hardware tools. There's a lot of interesting hardware launches, including the the Bitcoinized machine, the bit axes, really new, different, interesting models that are launching on Geyser every now and then. Um, and I think in terms of like the most interesting projects, it's really hard because there's so many different projects that I've launched on Geyser. Um, um, I think, yeah, it's a really hard one for me to say which one is the most interesting.
It's like
Uh,
picking your favorite kid, right? It's
I know exactly. I mean, films like I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of films. So I think a lot of them, for me, would be the films, and it's amazing to see how much funding the films have been getting. You have a lot of them are like selling access to digital files of the movies themselves on Geyser. I'm trying to think. Let me cheat here and just go on Geyser right now and see what's like what was usually trending. Yeah, I think Bitcoin trading cards has been one of my most favorite ones. I think that the idea behind it is you have these collectible card games like Pokemon that I've been a huge fan when I was a kid, and you basically collect memories and collect actually educational material about what is Bitcoin, and a lot of them are scarce, and I think this, bringing the fun in Bitcoin is a very, very powerful way to bring out bring in adoption, bring in more adoption. You then have, yeah, I think some other really interesting ones include video games like Hero Bitcoin, the Bitcoin House Bali that is a circular economy in Indonesia. Um, Yeah, just the other day, there's a really important fundraiser that launched recently, which is Becca, who's a key force behind Geyser in the early days of Geyser, who apparently was recently diagnosed with cancer. So it's amazing to see Geyser being used for that, and she raised $12,000 in just a few days. Seeing that happen is like, you know, makes me so proud of what we built, and makes me so happy that we were able to serve the Bitcoin community and even our close friends with this tool. So so I think things like that, things that are unexpected but uh help to rise, like help to explain the value of what the values of the Bitcoin community is made of, and bring the community together to fund important initiatives. When this happens, it always it always gets me excited.
yeah, what you've built is sort of an engine that fuels the Bitcoin community as a whole, no matter what the project is, from video games to education initiatives. There's usually a Geyser link that you can go and send some sats to, right?
Yeah.
But there's lots of different kinds of projects on Geyser, and not all of them reach their goal, right? But there are some that over excel. So the ones that really have found the most success on your platform, they all, of course, tell a story, but there must be some common ties between them that makes that story stand out. So if you're a content creator, if you have an initiative and you want to post on Geyser, what do you think? What are some tips that you would give, and just overall online marketing and selling yourself and making sure that your message gets out there?
Yeah, so the funding, so it's a really good question because if you think about funding on Bitcoin funding, there are other tools out there, right? So for example, there's zapping, right? Zapping is a very cool tool. But we see zapping as a type of tipping, like you're tipping someone a few cents. Well, Geyser, and I think we're thankful for Zaps because it helps us realize what Geyser is and isn't. Geyser, although it can be used as a tip jar, uh, Geyser to really succeed is all about the ideas, right? It's all about making ideas come to life. It's all about helping improve the world in some way, whether it's through Bitcoin or like, a humanitarian emergency or something like that. It's all about making, solving the problem of the world with a clear solution, right? So funding can help the solution that can solve the problem. And so the best way, like I think there's this function of funding, which is essentially reputation times the proof of work times the impact is essentially conducive to more funding. So let's break it down. Trust. Trust is really, really hard to get. It doesn't just happen on Geyser. If you're just an unknown person and you have this brilliant idea with this great solution and you launch on Geyser, you're not likely to get much funding, right? Um, you need a community. You need some degree of connection of people that know you, that care about your idea as well. And that comes with time, it comes with work, it comes with ties, social ties, right? So it's really important. That's why we actually require you to log in with your social account on Geyser, whether it's Twitter, Nostr, or others, because we want you to connect your social proof, right? What's your social proof? What's the degree of connectedness that you have to the Bitcoin community, to the Bitcoin network? So that's super important. The second is like the proof of work. How much proof of work? Actually, before that, let's talk about the impact. It's like, what's the vision? Like, what is the key solution you've defined for that problem, right? And maybe, for example, your problem, your solution is Bitcoin education in this local town in the village. Well, the problem is fiat money sucks. It's deflating all your money, all your wealth. Bitcoin, let's just go out and just actually educate people through free education, right? That is a powerful solution. Like, let's use the Mi Primer Bitcoin diploma and teach people about what is money. That is a very good solution, right? Obvious, but important. So that vision, right? That's important. If you have a really shitty idea, or people do, that's not, Geyser will work if your idea has been crafted, ruminated, gone through some feedback loops. Geyser is not really the place where you want to get like the feedback from the community. It's really about where once you have a good idea, you put it out there, and then on Geyser you can change your project story, and you should iterate it. But ideally, you do have something quite solid, right? And the third thing is a proof of work, right? So you have this great idea, you have reputation, but how will people know you're actually invested in the idea, right? And this is where you need to have put work into the story, into the project. We're seeing a lot of projects now that are using ChatGPT to create the story for them. That's okay. Like you should leverage AI, but that doesn't give me the confidence that you've thought things through, right? And that you've put in the work to define the idea, that you've really invested in the project, right? So for example, there's a guy that does stickers, right? And and you can buy the sticker packs, and you can buy them in bulk, and you can put them all around the the town. And he has the years of like history of having done this. You know that you're gonna be able to buy the stickers and it's gonna work. But if it's an entirely new project and you don't know the degree of like proof of work, like is this person actually gonna do that, or is this person actually gonna send me the product? That's important. That's the proof of work is important. So there, what you want to do is you want to show that you're invested. You want to show that you've already gone the extra mile, that you're not just throwing this as idea out there, but that you actually are taking steps and measures to make it happen, whether it's through having gone through an existing prototype, whether it's through having done an MVP, but showing that you are actively pursuing it and you're not waiting for the money to do it. I think that's also really, really important. So these three key are like the functions of successful projects on Geyser. And also, yeah, apart from that, social proof, putting your content out there, like all the no-brainers. Yeah, you have to put your content there. Sometimes I hear people saying, "Oh, I'm not too good at marketing." Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but we have no choice anymore. Like we all have to be good at marketing, and putting ourselves out there. If we have a great project, a great idea, but we don't communicate it, if we don't put it out there consistently, it's not gonna happen. So yeah, so that's important, putting yourself out there. And then hopefully a platform like Geyser that can guide you more and more into your product being a success, um, is also important. So we try to learn and get the feedback from the community to make the platform more and more like smooth, to help projects understand like the path to success.
I think that's wonderful advice for anybody who's looking to post on Geyser and get a crowdfunding platform going. But my question for you now is about the Bitcoin community itself. You've been through multiple cycles now. You've seen people come and go. And when you launched this in 2022, you could say that the Bitcoin community itself was different, right? We had just El Salvador had just launched, Mi Premier had just started. There was lots of energy around circular economies, and now it seems a lot of the discourse has transitioned over to Bitcoin treasury companies and stocks and covered calls. So I think, of course, there's different narratives over time, but I think you have your finger on the pulse of the Bitcoin community, what matters to them, and what do you see as the underlying narratives right now?
Yeah, I mean, my take on narrative is that there are multiple narratives that are overlapping at the same and alive at the same time and challenging for attention. If you look back, where I started in 2017 or so, not even stacking sats was a meme at the time, but it was, yeah, it was sort of by Bitcoin. It's actually blockchain, right? That was sort of Bitcoin, but not only Bitcoin, not closed-minded, being open-minded to, to blockchains and all that stuff. A lot of people sort of, and I think honestly, that's still alive. Like, they're good at selling and their shitcoins um, to the top of funnel to people that are entering the space. They really are. Unfortunately, that's still there. But in terms of the Bitcoin community per se, we went through, think about 5 years ago, we had no Bitcoin only platforms for buying Bitcoin, right? Swan was not there, Strike was not there. It was all exchanges. It was all Bitcoin and everything else. Now you have so that was, I think, 5 years ago. It was like maybe 6 years ago. It was like the development of like Bitcoin only, right? That was the meme, the Bitcoin only, and that was very, very important. Then we say 3 4 years ago when we launched Geyser right around really like the bullish moment of Lightning. Like people were talking about Lightning, it was new, people were zapping each other, and those are awesome, beautiful times, right? You have people using Albi, you had so many great like just I don't know, just a great fun vibe. I really, really I do miss the time. It was awesome. And then you had Noster coming around 2023, late 2023, and that was massive. And I think it's really displaced in some way the Bitcoin community in some way. There's a lot of action in Noster, um, also still going on a lot on X, but in a different sort of way. And yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to how do I think about it as a bit like that. And then now you have, And I think heard this interesting quote, which was the Bitcoin community it doesn't exist anymore. And while I don't agree, the interesting take on that is that actually Bitcoin community has splintered a lot, right? It's splintered a lot. You have, the BitAxe kind of like techies, you have the Noster, it's sort of fragmented, which is a normal process, right? Everything will always sort of splinter off and diverge. Um, uh, but then you have now the MSTR sort of crowd, right? You have the treasury reserves, Bitcoin treasury, and that's sort of all the hype right now. That's the winning narrative is like Bitcoin as store of value, which is important. A really important aspect of Bitcoin is store of value, and this is Bitcoin literally going mainstream. But there's another small, you know, um, subcurrent of Bitcoin culture, a Bitcoin community, which I would define as the grassroots circular economy sort of maxis. And these are like the Bitcoiners that um, I really care about adoption, the adoption Bitcoiners. And these are Bitcoiners that want to see Bitcoin adoption happen, not just as a store of value, but as a medium of exchange. These are Bitcoiners that are 100% allocated in Bitcoin. If you tell them, oh, don't spend your Bitcoin, they'll say, well, I've got no fiat, basically, right? And they'll say, what am I supposed to use? Like, I have 100%, I'm maximizing totally my purchasing power because I don't have any fiat. And I think that's a phenomenon that is only going to keep growing in time. There are challenges with it, though. There's some really big challenges with it in terms of the regulatory aspects, right? Like the capital gains taxes. It's challenging to live with that paradigm, so it's not for everyone. But I think there's a lot of people that are in this. And the reason why I think it's an important movement is that it reminds us what Bitcoin is fundamentally. I think these are the new maxis. Like the Bitcoin adoption, grassroots adoption people are the new maxis because they want to see Bitcoin fulfilled in its full potential, not just as a store of value. And they keep reminding people, don't fall for this. Don't fall for this new shitcoinery. Um, uh, Although I'm nothing. It's MSTR. I think I'm a fan of Michael Sir. I think in many cases, I love what he's doing, and he gets Bitcoin. I really think he does. Um, but still, we don't have to fall for everything he says, and he says a lot of things to welcome the newbies, and that is Bitcoin is digital gold. But Bitcoin is much more than that. So he's a really good salesman for Bitcoin. But we have to remember what Bitcoin is in its full potential, especially if you've been in Bitcoin for some time. You want to, I think, and if you want Bitcoin really to succeed, you have to see Bitcoin as money ultimately. Like Jack Dorsey said, if Bitcoin doesn't develop as a monetary system of exchange in the next 5 years, Bitcoin risks disappearing. Now, I don't know if that's true exactly, but if I agree exactly, but I do agree with the sentiment that the narrative is important. Bitcoin is more than digital gold. Bitcoin is actually a medium of exchange. Um, and yeah, and I think while it's a subcurrent, I think it's growing. It's persistently there, and it is actually driving adoption. Like it is actually driving adoption all around the world, especially probably not as much in the Western world, but it's happening a lot in other continents, in South America, in Africa, and Asia, and so forth. So I would say that is probably the most interesting and significant narrative and story that is currently not really being investigated or sought, discussed, but it's there and it's going to creep up, and I think it will be the next big narrative, the next big story that we will see in the next 3 to 5 years. That's sort of my hope, and that's sort of what I'm fighting for.
I agree with you. I think the grassroots adoption, the circular economies, places like Bitcoin Beach, of course, Berlin in El Salvador, and I mean, just Australia. ABC News just went to one of Kenya's largest slums to look at Bitcoin adoption there. And yeah, people are happy to use it. It reduces the fear of getting robbed of your cash, right? And people can actually accumulate it and see it grow in value over time. And it's completely changing lives on a way that just holding a stock in your portfolio probably won't do. And yeah, I think Geyser is the perfect way to help these things grow, get the word out, and see it evolve over time too, right? You get invested again, it's the narrative thing. You get invested in the story, you get invested in the people who are leading these initiatives, and you want them to grow and have the best opportunity for them in their community and see Bitcoin be used as real money here. And it's
Right, right. Yeah, and just to follow up on that, the question is why, right? Why, why? And the reason is if Bitcoin just becomes a stock, it will it's really about. I think there's an interesting framing I'd like to point out, which is the Metcalfe's law, right? The power law, right? The power law states that the value of the network is equivalent to the number of connected nodes in the network. Now, I think the key phrase there is connected nodes. So if you're holding Bitcoin, you are essentially connected to the node that you are buying Bitcoin from. So there's one connection. If you instead are a Bitcoin adoption maxi, if you're a grassroots maxi and you're spending your Bitcoin, you have a lot more connections to you. And so by creating and reinvigorating those connections of all these different users, say a user spends Bitcoin 1,000 times in a year, right? That's 1,000 connections that you are reinvigorating within the ecosystem, and that's what makes Bitcoin alive, and that's what makes Bitcoin actually ultimately grow. If you're just buying Bitcoin, again, absolutely fine with that. Like you should buy Bitcoin, but you have to understand that you're not really contributing significantly, neither to the growth of Bitcoin, nor ironically at the price level, right? Because again, the value of the network is connected to the number of connected nodes. So if, again, the value of the network is proportional to the monetary value of the network. So if we want Bitcoin to grow as price, we have to make it grow as a network. And we make it grow as a network by making it grow as a number of connected nodes, which is using it as money.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. The more you use it, the faster adoption happens, right? You're cutting down the
Yeah.
time for it to reach those milestones that all the suit coiners are dreaming about, right? $1 million Bitcoin will happen a whole lot sooner if we were all using it to earn money and
Yes.
to spend money, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And do you think that the infrastructure that we have right now, such as Lightning and Noster, um, are suitable for global spending of Bitcoin, or are we going to need some big breakthroughs in the years ahead in order to have that dream come alive?
I think it will happen. I think I think the way that I see the next, say, 10 years of development, my take on it would be this, is that Bitcoin on Lightning will be how we get global mass adoption. You will have neobanks like Revolut, like we're seeing Revolut integrating Lightning. You will have this across the board. Most neobanks, if they want to innovate, they need to integrate Lightning. And Lightning works beautifully custodially. Custodially, Bitcoin Lightning will become the new, like the new rails of finance for global spending for these neobanks. I think that's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, where does Bitcoin go though, or where does like non-custodial Bitcoin go? Well, I think that will move away from Lightning. I think non-custodial Bitcoin. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope non-custodial Lightning is truly viable, like with the SDKs, like Breeze is doing a great job that with Greenlight, and I'll be non-custodial Nostr Wallet Connect. I really hope that's the case, but chances are Arc will be where it's basically the non-custodial Bitcoin that all Bitcoin maxis are going to use, like natively. Based on my experience trying it and speaking to some people, I'm quite bullish on Arc, and I think it'll be basically the new non-custodial Bitcoin because it just works so seamlessly that it'll supplant non-custodial Lightning. So Lightning will be mostly custodial because that's what it's best for. That's what it works great with. So yeah, so that's how I would say it. So if you're a new developer, pay attention on Arc, start looking into it, and obviously keep building on Lightning because there's so much to build. But that's that's sort of what excites me in the coming few years, and I still need to do my research as well. But I do think that those are some interesting trends to look into.
Yeah, ARC, the three-letter word that is often talked about, but I think not really understood too well by this
Yeah,
community yet, right? But from
yeah,
what a lot of people who are working closely with it say, it could open brand new doors and open up a whole new era of Bitcoin self-sovereignty, right?
yep.
And so as we round out here, talk about Geyser. What are your plans for the rest of 2025? You've got this hero program, you're building the community there, and what exciting things can we see coming down the road?
So there's one really exciting thing that I do want to mention here, maybe for the first time, and that is that we are building a. You know how we mentioned there's these three pillars of Geyser, right? The Bitcoin initiatives, the Bitcoin product launches, and the causes. Well, we're gonna be really taking the product launches and putting it on steroids because we're gonna be building a system for all or nothing, like Kickstarter on Bitcoin. And that means that funds are gonna be held in escrow through a smart contract that we do not have control over. They will be held in escrow until the duration of the campaign. If the goal is reached in that set time, the funds go to the project creator. If the goal is not met, the funds go back to the funders, right? So that's something that we're super excited about because we've been talking about it for so long. It took us some time to get here, but now we're building it, and this will create the new, like essentially aligned incentives between creators, contributors, to make new projects happen. A lot of projects, funders don't want to fund it because they don't know if it's going to happen or not, if the funds are going to be reached to make it happen. This solves it, right? Now they can assure that if the goal is not met, the funds will go back to them. The creators also in a similar position. They feel like I'm not sure if I'll get enough money to make it happen, so I have to wait. Like I'm not sure if I should launch it because if I get only half of the money I need, I'm not going to be able to do it, so I'm not even going to bother. So this will be a really powerful way to have 30 to 60 days, actually up to 60 days to launch your campaign, see if you get the funds you need. If you make it, great, you get it. If not, the funds go back and you have peace of mind of the funds. So I think this will be a really something I'm really excited about because it can really create massive hype around new projects that have sort of restricted to this timeline, and it'll create I think again a lot of hype for new projects, especially new product launches, and it'll be working natively Lightning on chain, and it'll be using rootstock um, for the smart contract element. So the funds are going to be sort of held in this sort of smart contract that nobody has control over, and and yeah, and funds will be released upon whether the goal is completed or not. So again, really excited about this. I think it can be a game changer.
Absolutely. Adding that sense of urgency definitely sparks a fire under people's butts and gets them to actually
Yes.
move, to send those.
Yes. Exactly.
Cool. Well, Mick, no, let's end on that note. That's huge news. Very
Perfect.
excited to see that come out. If people want to learn more about Geyser, how to get a project going, where should they go?
Follow us on Geyser Fund on Twitter, on Noster. Go on geyser.fund where you can register, drop your email. We can send you updates about new project launches that are happening. And the cool thing about Geyser is really the belief that anyone can get started and can play a part in Bitcoin and in Bitcoin adoption. And so if you have an idea of something to launch, a new book, a new podcast, a circular economy and so forth, ask your community about it, see if there's a community that would fund it, and then launch it on Geyser. It's free to launch, it's free to use. we only charge per contribution. And if you run a node, Geyser is even free to use. So yeah, it's not really a no-brainer. So really looking forward to you launching your project, because Bitcoin adoption depends on these acts of launching projects and contributing to projects that can help fuel adoption, make it happen faster.
100%. There's no time like the present to get started, get your project going, get the word out there, and help build the Bitcoin community. Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thanks, Rob.